Hello once again, this is Jennifer and I am always thankful you're here. Now today I'm taking an inky background and some heat embossing and using an ink lifting technique to create 2-for-1 cards. It is really easy to do, works great with any stamps you have, and then you can incorporate any other products you want also. I will also share a tip for you that I do to save time when I'm making several cards at once. Now the stamp set that I'm choosing to use today is the new Simon Says Stamp Timber collaboration with Waffle Flower. This is a 6x8 stamp set with great snowflakes and sentiments in it. I like that the sentiments are non-holiday too, so you can use them in the winter season. And there is that unique looking image in the middle of the stamp set that can be used to make an even larger snowflake, which you'll see me do in this video. So it really has more to offer than it looks like at first glance. I really like the style of it, but you could use absolutely any stamp you want for this. So I'm starting out by stamping the snowflake, one of the snowflakes, in that Waffle Flower set with VersaMark ink onto regular white cardstock. I'm using Neenah Classic Crest Solar White, but whatever heavyweight cardstock you have should work. I then am adding Hero Art's white embossing powder. Any white embossing powder should work. Now I'm doing multiple cards at once, so you'll see me stamp the same image on 5 pieces of cardstock, add the embossing powder on 5 pieces of cardstock, and then heat emboss all 5 pieces of cardstock at once. I do find it faster to do all of the heat embossing in the end. Thankfully, VersaMark doesn't dry that fast, that you do have that time, that you can add the powder to lots of images and then heat emboss them all at once. It saves time because your gun will be really hot, and so it'll heat emboss each image faster. Now, you could stop here if you wanted to. You just have a white heat embossed image on white cardstock. But I like to layer up my embossing. So right on top of the image we've already done, I'm stamping the same image with another layer of VersaMark ink and adding another layer of white embossing powder and heat setting it. This makes my heat embossing smoother and more dimensional. I find this is nice to do whenever I have a really solid image or something like this that had solid lines to it, but it's totally up to you if you choose to do this or not. I will add that second layer of white embossing to all of my snowflakes. So there you can see the result we have here. If you want more dimension, you could even do a third layer. All right, now we have this funny looking little stamp here that you can use to make your snowflake bigger. And we're just going to add it into the pattern. You'll see as I go. So I've lined it up with the pattern, very easy to do. Use my anti-static powder tool, stamp this image with VersaMark ink, and then add the embossing powder and do the same process for all of the backgrounds. So we're actually taking that smaller snowflake and making it so big that you could even use it on a 5x7 card. So here you can see how it's getting bigger with each of these images that we'll end up stamping. Now that was one layer of embossing powder. You can see the difference there. Here I did a second layer, and now it has that nice dimension to it. So I did that to all of my backgrounds. So I have the snowflake with one of those little spikes sticking out. Now I'll move that little spike to the next spot in the pattern and repeat the process there. And I'll keep repeating this until I'm all the way around my snowflake and I have this giant snowflake made from that one smaller image. I really like when stamp sets have a lot to offer, and this is definitely one of those. So here you can see the giant snowflake that we have. Double white heat embossed on all of these white cardstock pieces. I have all of these ready so I can make lots of backgrounds at once. Okay, now it's time to create our inky backgrounds. Now the trick to this is to use an ink that reacts with water and to use dark or bold colors. I chose to use Simon Says Stamp Saturated Inks. The colors are beautiful, and I'm choosing the darkest shades. This color is called Taffy. I'm going direct to paper, to regular white cardstock, and putting a heavy amount of color down. The more ink you put on your cardstock, the better this technique will work. The darker or more bold colors you choose, the better this technique will work. Now you could do ink blending, but that would really require a lot of effort because you want a lot of ink. So direct to paper really is best. You'll see I'm kind of overlapping these, but not caring at all about making them really blend. You just want to get the ink down. The technique will do the blending for you. As far as what inks will work, any ink that is water reactive will work. Tim Holtz Distress Ink is great for this also. If you want to check your dye ink and see if it is reactive with water, just put a bunch of ink down direct to paper and flick some water on it. If the water softens the paper or changes the color, then you know it's water reactive. All right, so now I have a ton of ink down on this piece of cardstock. Next, we need a die cut machine. Any die cut machine will do. You're going to set up your die cut machine as if you were doing good old-fashioned die cutting. Doesn't matter what machine you use. Now we need to saturate that inked piece of cardstock with water. I'm spraying it with water, and it takes quite a bit of water. You can play around with it to see how much your cardstock would need. But I keep spraying it until it stops soaking up the water. Notice as I'm spraying, it soaks in the water. Once it stops wanting to soak it all in, I know I've reached a good point. I will take this and I'll lay it onto one of my cutting plates in my die cut machine. Just like you would lay your paper and die into the machine, you're just putting this inked piece down. Then you're going to take your heat embossed snowflake from before. So see how there's the heat embossed snowflake? Put that face down onto your wet inked paper. Put the other cutting plate on top, and we're just running it through as if we were doing die cutting. I do like to go back and forth and not go too fast because I really want that ink to soak in. All right, once we're done, we can take this out. I will say, as you start to pull your cardstock pieces apart, if they don't want to come apart easily, heat set them a little bit so it doesn't tear. But I found no problem pulling these apart. And check out these two backgrounds. The background on the left is the one where we put down that heavy amount of ink. The background on the right was just white with the heat embossed snowflake. When we smushed them together, some of the ink transferred from the left piece to the right piece. And the impression or the raised area of the heat embossing on the right piece left an impression on this left piece. It's pretty subtle on this example, but you'll see it more intense on other examples. So we were able to create two backgrounds from one technique. Now let's repeat that process. I have inked a background in a similar way. This time I'm spraying on Ranger Perfect Pearls and a water mix. See how that water looks pearly? It's a pigment powder, and I put a scoop of it into a water mist bottle. And I'm going to spray some water on first to saturate the paper. Then I'll put a little bit of that Perfect Pearl spritz on top too. This will give us a shimmery look also. So you can use any shimmer spray you want for this also. All right, once I've saturated that background, I'll pick it up and put it onto one of my cutting plates. Then I'll take one of my other snowflake heat embossed images, put it face down onto it, and run that back and forth through my die cut machine. Again, my die cut machine is just set up with the sandwich that I normally use for die cutting. I just don't have a die in there. All the die cut machine is doing is putting pressure between those two pieces of cardstock. So some of the ink will transfer to the other piece of paper, and an impression from the heat embossing will end up on the other piece of paper. It's just a really fun ink lifting technique. All right, so let's pull these apart carefully and look at that beautiful result. It ends up giving you a blended look in the background, even though we didn't take any time to do so. And you have two backgrounds you can use on two different cards. And because we use that Perfect Pearl and water mix, this has a nice shimmer to it. You'll see it up close in a little bit. And because I like this kind of rainbow look so much, I did another one, exact same process. This time I skipped the shimmer, and there we have two more. This one I put a little less water, which actually gives a more intense result on our original inked piece, which is here in my hand. So you can actually see the impression that the heat embossing did a bit more. But again, I'll demonstrate how to make that stand out here in a moment. Another interesting thing about this is the other side of this piece. When you put all that pressure between those two pieces of wet cardstock, you end up getting a lot of the ink seeping through to the other side. So even the back side of this has a cool look to it, and I end up using it for a card later. So here are these backgrounds I've done so far. I've let them dry and trimmed them down a bit. As I mentioned, this giant snowflake would be great for a 5x7 card. I ended up doing all 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches today, but keep in mind it would work for a bigger card. Any type of background stamp, any type of large stamp, or even small stamp would work for this. And here is the back side of one of the impressions we made. I just think that has a really fun look to it. All right, now let's do some more examples using different colors. I still am using the Simon Says Stamp Saturated inks. I just chose these because I have dark colors and I like the colors and I know they're water reactive. This time I'm just putting 3 colors down. I'm kind of dabbing and dragging the ink pad on my cardstock to make sure I put as much color down as possible. The more ink you put down, the better this technique works. Now, it may seem you're putting a lot of ink down that goes to waste, but really it doesn't because you're creating 2 cards and it's not that much ink. These ink pads have a ton of ink in it, so doing a technique like this shouldn't take much. All right, so I am spraying that pretty generously with water. See, I keep spraying it until it stops wanting to soak in. Then I pick it up and put it onto my cutting plate. I'll take another one of my heat embossed snowflake pieces and lay it face down onto that and run that back and forth through my die cut machine. By the way, all of the cardstock I used today is heavyweight cardstock. You could use watercolor paper, but I actually find that the ink doesn't transfer as well if you do. But if that's all you have, you could try that. But really, any heavyweight white cardstock will work. I'll link to what I use below. All right, after running that back and forth, I carefully pull it apart. Remember, give it a little heat set time if it doesn't want to come apart on its own. And look at these backgrounds. Now you definitely can see the impression on the piece on the left more this time. The white embossing from the right, that raised white embossing leaves the impression on the piece on the left. The reason you can see it more here is I used really dark colors, a dark navy, a dark purple, and a dark pink. The darker colors you use, the more impactful your impression will be on that second piece. And by the way, I am a firm believer that everything looks better when it's trimmed down. So here are the same 2 backgrounds, dry and trimmed down. I really like this technique when you use multiple colors, but it also works if you use a single color. This is Simon Says Stamp Ocean Ink, and I'm putting a heavy amount of this ink onto a piece of white cardstock. So I'm going with 1 color this time just to show you that it works really well. And also we're going to add some other colors on top of it when we're done. Okay, so we're going to spray that until it's saturated with water, pick it up and put it onto our cutting plate. Take one of our heat embossed snowflakes and lay it face down on top and run that back and forth. The heavy ink from the one piece will transfer to the other, and the impression from the heat embossing on the other piece will transfer to the inked one. And here is the result you get. I really like these 2 pieces so much. Great for a subtle background with this one. You can add it to it whatever you want. And the other one just has a soft kind of watercolor blue background. Let's step that one up a bit. Here I have another piece of white cardstock, just plain white cardstock. And I'm adding some inked dots over it. Nothing fancy. Again, you don't have to spend time blending or getting a good image with this technique. It'll do the work for you. You just want to put a lot of ink down. So here I'm using a blending tool and very generously applying Simon Says Stamp Royal ink over these dot openings. Now this stencil is really cool because you can ink it, ink it, turn it, and get a great background. I'm not doing that today. I'm just using it to create a bunch of dots in 2 different colors. This one is the amethyst color. And again, I'm putting it down as heavy as I can. If I could go direct to paper in these little holes, I would, but instead I used the blending brush. I also noticed my transfer was a little light on the one side with blue ink, so I pressed a little blue ink there also. Okay, so now on this crazy looking piece here, we're going to spray it generously with water. You will see the ink start to move. That's okay. You're going to want to pick this up and lay it onto your die cut machine. Now, I noticed I put too much water on it this time. Because there isn't that much ink on the cardstock, it doesn't need as much water. And then I'm taking our piece that we've already transferred ink onto, the same one that's just light blue, putting that on top and running this through. So what will happen now is all of those little dots of color Some of that ink will transfer onto our blue background too, so we get this fun layered look. Now you could have gone directly onto this background with the stencil, but there's kind of this fun watercolor look that you get by doing this technique that really is worth doing. Let's do one more set of backgrounds. This time I have white cardstock and I'm going direct to paper, just kind of pressing firmly a few different colors of dark ink pads. That first one is Iris and this one is Royal. Notice I'm overlapping the inks. It doesn't matter at all. I really end up liking this overlapped look. All right, so we'll spray that generously with water. You can see, and I spray it until it stops absorbing. Then we'll put that into our die cut machine, one of our heat embossed snowflakes face down on top of it, the other die cutting plate, run that back and forth, and look at this beautiful transfer. So you can do stripes, you can do blocks of color, you can do anything you want as long as you put down a heavy amount of ink. And I love this beautiful impression piece on the left. I did decide to add some shimmer to the piece on the right, so I took my Perfect Pearl and water mix and sprayed that on top of our background. It gives a beautiful shimmer. Now this Perfect Pearl water mix I've had for years. All I did was fill this water bottle with water and add about a half a teaspoon or so of the Perfect Pearl pigment powder inside. And every time I just shake it, and I've never had problems with clogging, and it gives beautiful results. Once it dried and I trimmed it down, we have these results. I hope you can see the shimmer on the background of this. I wish the video captured it better. It's gorgeous in real life and didn't take much time to add. Then the other background has that fun impression that the heat embossed snowflake left behind. It's subtle, but you can add to it, which I'll show you in a moment, to create a fun background. Now that we have all of these backgrounds, let's add to them a little bit, step them up with some additional stamping or stenciling. Then we will turn them into cards. For most of my cards, I added a background stamp from Simon Says Stamp called You Matter. I have my Misty stamping tool and I've put in it the Brutus Monroe stick and stamp mat, which will hold my cardstock in place when I stamp. I'm lining my background up on the stamp itself. Once I have it lined up straight, I will close my Misty stamping tool upside down on it, and the sticky mat will grab my background right in the right position and hold it there as we stamp on it. You could stamp on this with whatever ink you want to. I chose to use a white pigment ink. I thought white pigment ink would be nice because it would be subtle against the background and would be softer. I wanted kind of a soft background here so my sentiment could be bold when I add it on top, and white pigment ink did the trick. Another ink that works great on any colored background is a light gray ink. So this time I'm taking some of the small snowflake images from the Waffle Flower stamp set. I position them on the background and I'm stamping them with Hero Art's soft granite ink, which is just a nice gray ink. The gray ink really works well on any colored background. You could choose to use the color ink pads that you used earlier, like the pinks, blues, and greens, but this is much faster to use the one color. This will dry soft and it'll look nice on whatever color is behind it. Also, the white pigment ink behind it kind of resists that gray dye ink we put on top, so you can still see the text through it. And I love that layered looking background. Now it's time to add a bold sentiment to the center, and I thought I'd share with you a big time-saving trick that I have. This is something I've done for a while and it really helps me out. Whenever I get a large word die that I really like, I go ahead and die cut a bunch and glue them together, all from white cardstock so they're ready to go. Here are some that I had in my stash. All of the word dies I used here have a shadow die and then the word die itself. I cut the shadow twice from white cardstock and the word twice from white cardstock, and I've already glued them together. I did that off screen one time when I was just sitting around, and I have them all ready. I do sometimes do some in black and white, like the one you see in the middle, but usually I do all of the layering in white. Then later I can either color the top layer with a marker or glue on a colored layer, as you see me doing here. It is a big time saver to have these basic sentiments ready to go. And by using words that have a shadow die, I know it'll work even on a busy background like this. In this case, I used a dark gray cardstock for the word hugs. I thought black might be a little bit too bold. Plus, we're going to add to it to make it sparkly, and dark gray cardstock sparkly looks really cool. So I'm using my Stardust glitter pen and coloring over that gray cardstock. A Stardust glitter pen puts a lot of sparkle down. Then I will put Ranger glossy accents on top. And when this dries, those letters will have beautiful dark metallic look to it. So if you want to save time, take your word dies and do a bunch of die cutting. Keep them in Ziploc bags and have them ready to go. I do think it's helpful to have some layers glued together so they have dimension too. So here's the completed card. Check out those letters. So that was dark gray cardstock with the glitter pen colored on and glossy accents on top. I love that look. I also did add some little confetti to the background because you can see when I tilt that in the camera that it catches the light nicely. So we have all of those layers plus that soft color that we got using the technique at the beginning of this video. Here's another card that I did the same way. It's just one of the other backgrounds I had. This time I used some dimensional gems. These are bubble bath iridescent gems, and it just gives a pop of dimension also. This next card features the background where we did the blue ink and then we added the dots of color with the stencil. On this one, I skipped the background stamp. Instead, all I stamped on top were some of the snowflakes from the Waffle flower stamp set. I stamped some of the snowflakes with white pigment ink and some with soft granite ink, and I love that look of layer in the background. I used a layered sentiment from my stash, and I put dark gray cardstock on the top of that, along with some glossy accents. For a bit of sparkle, I added some confetti scattered along the background. And although I haven't used it yet, I still have the background that I created along with this one that I can use later on. On my next example, I added a bit of stenciling along with stamping over our heat embossed snowflake. The heat embossing on the snowflake will resist whatever we put on top. This time I'm using the Lawn Fawn Snow Flurries stencil. I'll hold that down over our background, and I have a blending brush to apply white pigment ink over the openings. This will be subtle. If I wanted it to be more intense, I could use a darker ink color, but I love the look of that white pigment ink. So on all of my backgrounds, the only stamping or stenciling I add is either with the white pigment ink or with that soft granite gray ink. I added to the center one of my layered sentiments that I had in my stash. This one has a black shadow with the white letters on top. And I trimmed that all down, added it to an A2 note card, and added some confetti for sparkle. Now here is the partner background. You can see that subtle impression of the large snowflake. On that background, I did stamp some soft granite snowflakes, and I also added some holographic snowflakes that I die cut. I feel like these inky backgrounds lend themselves very well to any type of layering, whether it's stamping, stenciling, or die cutting. By the way, the little snowflakes that I use there are from this Birch Press snowflake die set. It has these 4 intricate small snowflakes and the shadow dies. I didn't use the shadows this time, but it's nice to have that option. All right, here is another one of our backgrounds where I took that second one with the impression of the snowflake, added some die cuts, and also added a bit of stamping with that soft granite ink. Very simple design, and it came together quickly because we created that background 2 for 1 with this technique, and I already had the sentiments made. Now its partner background is the card on the left with the large white heat embossed snowflake. This is the one where I sprayed the perfect pearl water on top. I think you can see the shimmer a bit here. I love the look of perfect pearl and water sprayed on a background. I did use the You Matter background stamp and white pigment ink to stamp, and also the soft granite ink and snowflakes. For our last card, I used this background. Do you remember this one from earlier? It was the impression piece. You could see the subtle snowflake impression from the heat embossing on the other piece. When you flipped it over, you could see all the intense color that was pressed through that cardstock, that soaked through. Well, I decided to use this backside on the card. I just thought it had a fun look to it. So be sure to check both sides of all the pieces you create with this technique. Sometimes the backside is even cooler. So I trimmed that down and added it to a white note card. I did stamp on top with the You Matter background stamp and white pigment ink, and also some individual snowflakes with the soft granite ink. I added on also some small white die-cut snowflakes and a layered Just a Note sentiment. That's from Concord and Ninth. The shadow's cut from white, and the Just a Note is cut from black glossy cardstock. I already had those pre-made because I really liked that sentiment, so I just grabbed it and added it right to the card. I did add confetti again to create a little bit of sparkle. All right, so there you have a really fun way to use your inks and your heat embossing to create two inky backgrounds at once. I hope you'll try this because really it's a fun way to make a bunch of backgrounds and use the supplies you have. If you're interested in what I used, I do link below to all of the supplies in my YouTube description. And at the end, I'll link to a couple other videos with similar techniques so you can find more ways to stretch your supplies. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.